And welcome to episode 3 of Unpacking Endpoint Management. I am Steve Thomas, a senior program manager with Microsoft's Endpoint Manager Customer Experience Engineering team, and I'm here with Danny Guillory, who is a senior program manager on our Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager team as well. Danny is also here as our featured guest this week as we talk about Windows Cloud Transformation, or the Big 3. And we're going to go ahead and kick it off by asking Danny, what do we mean by the Big 3? What is the Big 3?
Big 3 is what I consider Cloud Management Gateway, Tenant Attach, and Co-Management. Those are the three that I say are imperative to any customer that is trying to have modernize their estate, right? They want to go to the cloud, end up in the cloud, whether they end up in cloud only or a little bit of on-prem. If you have configuration manager today, I would say it's imperative that you do the Big 3 so that you can continue to service your devices, service your end users. It's going to help you be much more efficient and effective. So we'll start there. But that answers the question.
Yes. So what is tenant attached? What do we mean by tenant attach in Config Manager?
All right. So tenant attach is pretty exciting. And so tenant attach means it's kind of the beginning of the conversation when customers say, hey, we want to go to the cloud. We know it's not going to be an overnight thing. The first thing we ask is, hey, what do you have to work with? Some customers have a different product. Some customers have nothing. And specifically for the customers that have Configuration Manager, tenant attach is typically one of the first things we talk about. Obviously, co-management as well as CMG comes into play. But customers that want immediate cloud value, we stress today, go tenant attach, low risk, easy to implement, doesn't change any workflows. I mean, all of the Big 3 is kind of like that. But essentially, once you tenant attach your environment, cloud attach your environment to the cloud, you get some extra features. So as soon as you configure tenant attach within your configuration manager estate, you're going to actually see things happen in the cloud console. So when we talk about that cloud console, I'm just going to go into endpoint.microsoft.com, and you'll see here I'm looking at my Windows devices. Let me get rid of some screens to get some extra real estate here. And then when we go into, I'm just going to pick on one I know is on. So this specific device, I think this one is on. Actually, let's be a little bit more risky. So this device is sitting here on my desk. My configured environment is somewhere in the cloud. I have no clue where. But you see on the left-hand side, things happened. With a cloud-only managed device, you get items on the left-hand side. But when the device is tenant attached, meaning you went into your configuration manager, again in cloud attached, check the box to upload your device records into the cloud console, these are extra things you start to see. So we see Resource Explorer, client details, timeline, collections, applications. This is kind of that immediate cloud value that we talk about. So once you tenant attach or enable the tenant attach feature, you get immediate cloud value. Super exciting when I talk to customers about, hey, no, we don't want to repackage everything. We want to gradually get to the cloud. We don't want to overnight switch and take this huge level of effort, things like that. So when we have that conversation, I mean, first thing comes to mind, plain as day, is tenant attach. You get to leverage all your investment that you had in the configuration manager already. We don't want you to throw it away. Neither do you want to do all that extra level of effort. I just remember from my days, I had at least 10,000 applications in my configuration manager estate, but I want to repackage all of those into the cloud. I may consider it, but realistically, yeah, that's just not going to happen, right? That's a lot of level of effort. They just wasted time and effort that people would be going through. So essentially, no. What I go like to show customers is, hey, along the lines, right, not having to redo all those applications. If we just look at applications, hopefully it comes up pretty quick. There it goes. So here I have all the applications you're about to see that show up. Oh, sorry, it's taking so long. But the applications that show up, these applications are packaged in my configuration manager. So just going through if you've watched the other YouTube video on the channel, how to enable tenant attach, the video, I think is less than 2 minutes long. So think of that, less than 2 minutes, immediately cloud value. So I see the applications I have in my configuration manager, the applications that are deployed, assigned to this device, and now I can literally just hit the button and do something. And as you can tell, I've did this demo a few times already, but let's see, let's just go 7-0. It's available, hit the button. I don't know why it's a little bit slower today, but there you go. So top right, you see install an application. Once it finishes or fails, I'll see it right there at the top. So immediately cloud value, not having to repackage my applications into the cloud. So that's just the beginning. I guess one other thing I would call out while we're on the topic is that'll pop up in a few minutes and say success, hopefully. But the other really, really cool thing I like to show customers is device timeline. If you haven't seen it, it is literally probably one of my most favorite features, the most exciting features. So I clicked on it, I don't see anything yet. So, but if I come up here and hit filter, come on. And then let's just say, hey, I want to go look at things since the beginning of the month or 4/1. Hit apply. Right here, what you're going to see happen is this is actually going to become really fulfilled, where I can actually see a bunch of different things. And let me bring this down. There you go. If I had a bigger resolution, better resolution, this section here would look better. But what you can see is a timeline of events that happened on that device, whether it be successes or failures, device boot. So I initiated shutdown. You see I did something yesterday on this device. It actually went and did some type of update. So I can actually see what this update was. So yesterday I did some community update on this device. So again, immediately getting cloud value just from the cloud attached perspective. And then this is how you start to think about that transformation into the cloud. So I'll pause. Questions, concerns, thoughts, ideas.
No,
so much more I can talk about.
Oh, this is wonderful, and I want to remind everyone who is currently watching that the Q&A chat is live, and we've got some activity already. And please feel free to chime in with your questions. I did have a question that kind of ties into some similar questions we're starting to see. Tenant attach versus co-management. Why would I go in one direction versus the other? Which one? I'm currently looking at evaluating either co-management or tenant attach. What are some factors that should affect my decisions?
Yeah. So if you saw another video I did or that came out early this week, Adam with the Intune training guys, so shout out to those guys. Thanks for having me on their show. I described the box, right? There's a box that I would put around configuration manager. And I'm getting to your question, but I want to make sure I give the right articulation. So when we talk about that box going to the cloud, what I like to help customers understand is that co-management is a signal that you're ready to move workloads to the cloud. And that's important. That's important because you need to consider how you're going to move those workloads to the cloud. Like, does it work for all your estate, some of your estate? You definitely should enable co-management, but you want to think about how you do that, because CMG is no risk, lots of value. Cloud tenant attach, no risk, lots of value. I tell customers to pause after the 2 steps. That doesn't mean you don't need to go to co-management. That just means you need to think about what workloads you want to move to the cloud, because the third action of enabling co-management means you're going to take a workload and move it to the cloud. It's not going to be driven by configuration manager or whatever process is before. You're going to take that workload and deliver it from the cloud. Essentially, you definitely should do it, because what you should be aspiring to do is simplify that estate. Simplify that management estate. Like, I remember very vaguely my last role, I was talking to a customer and my manager was with me. It was kind of beginning of me in that new role, and we did an EDC. And I got in the car on the way back to the office with my manager, and I was like, customers need to lean on the cloud with cloud attach and various different other pieces, so that they can simplify their configuration manager. I just remember the customer telling me how big their config man was. It was like over 40 servers. I've seen a lot bigger, but it was 40 servers. They can't keep up with how fast we're iterating, and it's such a pain for them to go through testing and various internal processes. So it's like, it's just like a light bulb hitting my head, right? When you think about the cloud, a lot of customers think they want to come turn this light switch off and on. Like, I want to cut the cord here, go straight here. it's not that you can't. That road is rough, but if you properly prepare and leverage the things that we gave you, that road can be smooth and really almost a non-event. So, the CMG, the tenant attach, and then the co-management, definitely the three things you should be doing. And the co-management, again, getting back to your question, the difference is tenant attach, you're just using a cloud console. You basically turn a configuration manager into a cloud console. You have a cloud console to go to have on-prem actions driven from the cloud. Co-management means you want to take that workload. A good workload would be conditional access, compliance, or Windows updates. Those are kind of the three that most customers will toss around through my conversations. I'm sure you've had other conversations with customers, but one of those three are normally the top three. Like, hey, what workload should I move? I like to let the customer pick, and then we'll talk about if that workload really makes sense, right? Because sometimes the first thing they say is not necessarily the thing that they want to move. Some customers say, "Oh, I want to move device configuration," but they haven't thought about the things in the middle of point A and point B, because they're at point A, they want to be at point B, but all the things in the middle are the decisions that were made that they didn't know they made, right? When you say you're here today and you want to be in the you're on-prem today, you want to be cloud tomorrow, great. There are decisions you just made that you don't know that are the pieces in between that need to be monitored, vetted, thought out to make sure your transition is smooth.
So we're already starting to get some questions, and a few of them I was bracing for impact because I kind of knew some were coming, but we had a question around tenant attach bringing Windows Server management to Intune, kind of as a backdoor approach there, and of course there are some ramifications of that. Do you want to go ahead and speak to that possibly?
Not so much. I mean, there's not enough to unpack there, really. I mean, there are things we're doing when it comes to server management, but remember, the cloud is more for endpoints, right? If you want to manage your servers, hands down, you should be doing that with your configuration manager estate today. So it kind of goes back to what I was saying about simplifying, right? When we talk about that simplification, think about how big your config manager estate is. Think about how much maintenance you put on it today, right? When you think about that, if there was a path for you to simplify using the cloud with those endpoints, now maybe that configuration manager estate is cut in half. Your maintenance is cut in half. Your efficiency goes through the roof. You're not babysitting and monitoring things. A thing I articulated to a customer today about this is, thanks for everybody that's reached out to us after the shows, because I know I've talked to a few people from tech community and had meetings with customers. So if you got questions, just ask them, and we'll jump in. And I definitely love talking to customers. Like I'm sure Steve does too. But going back to that, right? Whenever you go to that server stuff, leave the server stuff in config man. If you can do that, think about this. You've actually just simplified your estate. And what I was telling the customer earlier this week is, hey, he's got customer had 1,000 config man servers in their infrastructure. What if you could cut that in half? Well, how do I cut that in half? What if you were able to leverage more cloud, right? And now you don't have all these distribution points all over the place. Now you're leveraging MCC, branch cache, other things like that you don't need to have other expense for monitoring tools and workflows for remediations, eliminating single points of failure, things like that. So the server stuff, you're getting some value, right, from the endpoint security stuff. Whenever you cloud attach and tenant attach, you're getting some things there, but I don't think it's a point where I would take my whole server estate and say, I'm going to drop config man. That just doesn't make sense. But if you think about it in reverse, like I just said, hey, take those endpoints and service them from the cloud where it makes sense, what makes sense and how you can do it. Now you've just simplified that config man estate. Now that maintenance and all the extra headache you're dealing with becomes a lot easier. Hopefully that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely, it does. It does. And one quick question, and then I want to kind of move the discussion topic a little bit. But Stefan is here. Hey, Stefan. For tenant attached delegation in MIM, does it work with custom Intune roles and custom scope tags, or does it only work with built-in roles?
Man, that's a good question. Say that one more time. I'm trying to unpack that one. What was the question?
For tenant attached delegation in MIM, Does it work with custom Intune roles and custom scope tags, or does it only work with the built-in roles?
I don't know a solid answer to that one right now. I will
I
post
don't
the answers
think
to that
so,
one
but we'll
after.
come back to you on that.
Yeah, that's what I'm leaning to, but I don't. I feel like I've tested everything in a product, but things change so much. I want to say no, but I don't want to say necessarily no either. So let us actually. I'll post the answer to that one after in the maybe in the YouTube channel or even on the Teams chat.
So, and we'll return to some of these questions a little bit later. So we talked about co-management, we talked about tenant attach a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about the cloud management gateway. So Danny, I have really been impressed with the flexibility of the co-management gateway in terms of how it's being applied in this pandemic over the last year or so. People have been using the cloud management gateway for things that I never would have thought of for specific scenarios. I'll give you a case in point. We have a lot of customers who are trying to, when they shifted their employees home a year ago, their VPN concentrators were getting just beat up with all of this traffic. So they were wanting to do some split tunneling. They were wanting to get away from forced tunneling. But the problem that we're running into is, for example, let's say shifting the update management workload to the cloud. They would come to me and they would say, hey, we only do IP-based rules for split tunneling. So we need all the IP addresses for the Windows Update service. And I'm like, well, that's a bit of a tall order, because we're a long way. We're 20, 25 years away from back in the day when all of the Windows updates sat on a little series of servers over in one of the buildings, and we had individual IP addresses. We're now talking about an ecosystem that services, over like 1.2, 1.3 billion devices worldwide, distributed across a wide variety of CDNs. So it's kind of impossible to get that kind of ring fence. So the customer came up with an idea. We'll just use Cloud Management Gateway, where we have this in Azure. We can, isolate this to a series of IP addresses that are well known, and you check back in with them, and even though there is a cost being incurred, which I hate that, it did work out for them quite well. So have you seen similar innovations being done with CMG over the last year?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm pretty bold with this, and I'll say it because, hey, I've told customers this before. If you don't have a CMG in place, you're behind. Like, it's honest and transparent as can be. If you don't have a CMG behind in your, you have a configuration manager state today, you're behind. CMG is just going to give you so much value, and it's COVID's reinforced us all as IT pros, and yes, I'm still an admin day too. It's forced us all to think different. I will tell you, before COVID, when we talked to customers about CMG, there were hurdles all over the place. After work from home became a thing, all of those hurdles won't say were gone, but they were not as prevalent as they were before. It wasn't so forced and dominant. So when you get a CMG, you still have secure communication to that device as it goes outside the four walls. And the key word there is secure communication, right? You're getting secure communication to that device, whether it's at home, grandma's house, hotel, coffee shop, hotspot, your house, doesn't matter. You still have secure communication to that device, and you can service those end users without added risk. So that I think is the most important thing when I talk to customers. Like, well, wait up, I got to build certificates and I got to do this, that, and the other. And you don't have to do all of that. To be honest, you shouldn't. We've given you ways to do this very simple. I was one of the first people that helped customers get it out in their environment when we first made Cloud Management Gateway, and it was a beast. I was, certificate hell is what I would say. And from a config man perspective, you're probably not a certificate guy, right? So what we did is we simplified it quite a bit, enhanced HTTP. If you again watch the video that I posted on the channel of how to build a CFG, you'll see I went to DigiCert. I got one cert. I'm servicing every device in my lab. Then you can, and most customers add on to that to think, hey, I've got these devices outside the four walls, but I still need to deliver certificates. You can deliver certificates outside the four walls. It doesn't have anything to do with CMG, but you can see how that type of articulation where you can service your devices outside with top security. So when you think about the CFG, all of those things become much more realistic and much more tangible, actionable for customers to do. So hopefully that makes sense. That's the long articulation.
That's great. That's absolutely great. Now, just to circle back, in case we have folks that are fairly new to the technology, what is a cloud management gateway, and how would that differentiate from like what we used to do over the internet with like IBCM?
Oh man,
this is the basics.
I was hoping that word wouldn't come up, that acronym, but yeah. So internet-based client management is how we used to do it. Again, still, you're building a resource, a server, you're putting it in a DMZ, you're monitoring it, single points of failure. You're doing all this extra work. You don't necessarily need to, just being honest and transparent. Look, I wouldn't do it today. If I was back in IT director at my estate, there's no way I'd build IBCM again. I have cloud management gateway. I'm going to build a cloud management gateway and be done with it. I don't want to build a resource on-prem because I think it's saving me money. It's really not, right? The cost is probably, I'm willing to bet. I'd bet that the cost of hosting your own IBCM versus CMG is way more than doing the CMG, just from the perspective of you think you're saving money, but you're spending money, resources, time, monitoring, licensing, whatever you're doing on that monitoring pieces, right? So anyway, getting on with that, because I'll ramble on with that for a while. If you really just have to do IBCM because you can't do CMG, then fine, go for it. But the path forward, I would say, is CMG, and CMG is exactly what you should be doing. The difference is like what the bolts are, nuts and bolts of it is. CMG is a cloud service that is just supported by a virtual machine on the back end. That's it. Like your device is going to talk to the cloud service. That is cloud service is supported by a VM. That VM that you should not be touching. Man, it's just flashbacks. Like when I was a PFE, customers were like, "Hey, how do I log into it? How do I update it? How do I patch it? I want to install tools on it." Hey, stop. You don't need to do all of that. That's hosted by our Azure services. We make sure it's updated. We make sure it is patched. We can't do things like that without meeting compliance and regulations out the wazoo. So guess what? It is secure. It is encrypted. It is something you shouldn't even have to worry about. I can literally tell you, I've been on the phone calls with customers. They found out how to remote into it. I'm like, stop, what are you doing? Because as soon as we service it, guess what? All of that work you think you've done to secure it, harden it, it's gone. So, even our requirements, we can't host those services without following very strict guidelines, very strict SLAs, requirements. Plus, why would you want that? Just thinking, right? If I build IBCM, now you've got an SLA around it. You've got to do the patching, the monitoring, rebooting. You're staying up late patching it or scheduling patching it, having to deal with it doesn't go out. You don't need to do that. CMG should be the way you should go as far as looking to reach devices beyond the four walls. Period. Done. What other questions? I'm sure somebody put some other questions about CMG in the chat.
There are, and last week before I had that disaster, that technical disaster, I had kind of buried the lead that your new role here at Microsoft is a much more influential role in terms of the direction of config manager. And it's a great opportunity for you now to because of your previous customer experience and the fact that you are, from my viewpoint, probably one of the most customer obsessed people at Microsoft I've ever met. And so I think it's, I'm thrilled about the future of config managers just simply because of that. Now that I have spent the the last 2 minutes there playing a little bit of brown nose rodeo here, I'm going to go ahead and bombard you with a few CMG questions. So
Go for it.
Are there any plans to move CMG into a fully SaaS-based service?
Interesting thought.
Put you on the spot here. Mike K had that question in the chat as well.
Yeah, interesting thought. Nothing I can really add or allude to there because still, I mean, what's the next version of CMG look like? And is it even really version? I wouldn't even call it a version. Innovation, right? Things change. If you've noticed, we've enabled CMG over virtual machine scale sets now, so that we use to help it with the customers with what is that, cloud service CSPs. So I mean, the cloud service, as much as customers, I say this is kind of hard to articulate, I guess. When customers ask like those deep questions, I want to know what's the motivation for that question, right? Like what could we do better in our documentation to explain that, not explain it, make it not a thing? Because CMG really, as we built it, to say we don't want it to be a thing and shouldn't be a thing, that's more of a Microsoft thing. I guess with a customer eye, when I look at it myself, is I want to know those nuts and bolts, because guess who's going to ask me about that? Security. So that's a fine line we're trying to walk on what we do and how we document those pieces. What we don't want to do is give you information that's just useless. We want to give you useful information. So hopefully that makes sense, but I really can't give a spot answer to that one just yet. As far as the patching DMZ servers, I would absolutely use CMG. Like, I mean, you got some options there, right? And the option is, I know I've done this, I know customers have done this, I work with them. You have control, you have options. So think about this, right? If you have the options, you have the control. When you look at it that way, is, hey, will networking allow you to patch those devices without having to go through CMG? What does that mean, though, right? Again, you got to unpack those questions to figure out what does that mean. That means you got to pop some holes in the firewall, right? So if you've got this 3-tier layout, I'll say if the far left is core, you get internal resources. If the middle is the DMZ and the far right is the internet, well, guess what? Somebody's got to pop some holes to let you update those devices in the DMZ. So that's one way, and then you don't have to use CMG. But if you do want us to use CMG, absolutely, you just need to make sure that the DMZ has the right communication to your cloud management gateway, and then to whatever resources getting the patches from, right? So Windows Update will. So as you look at those 3 different tiers, and I remember even doing this with my own environment, I know several customers, right? When you look at the different tiers of an environment, certain things are allowed, certain things are not allowed. So those are kind of the questions you got to ask. Then that'll help you determine if you need to do CMG or if you need to do internal, because they'll let you through the firewall, because maybe it's a secure server, maybe somebody will give you direct route. I don't know, but those are the questions that you need to ask to help you figure out which one will work. If your DMZ has internet access, ungated internet access, or even moderate internet access, then CMG is probably just the way to go if you don't even want to have that other conversation with the firewall team and all other people that have to allow you to communicate from core to DMZ.
So another interesting question that's come up in the chat, Danny, if I were to start fresh today with, like, let's say a greenfield cloud endpoint management strategy, why would I want to go to CMG as opposed to Tenant attach or code management? Is it an or and scenario?
So that's a really good question. Man, we could spend the rest of the hour on that, because that's a really good question. I mean, not try to spend the rest of the hour on it. I'll take the same approach I've taken with other customers. Hey, I want to leave this and go here overnight. Great. You know what I tell you? Go build it. Go build it, and then now you fill the gaps, and then we'll help you, right? And that's what I did when I was on Cat Team and Cat Intents. Hey, we want to go here and not have to do CMG tenant. We don't want to do the big three. Great, fine. Build your device, call attachment only, and now let's work backwards. That's what you should do. You should do that to help you understand where your requirements need to change. And what is so important about that type of process is you're going to build the scenarios that you need, and then you're going to say, well, I can't do all of this. And then guess what? When we work with you, at least when I used to work with customers, at least in Cat 10, I was like, hey, now we need to figure out where innovation needs to happen. Does innovation need to happen on your workflow, your thought process, or the actual technology? So one of those scenarios that I like to talk to customers about a lot is, or they'll bring up a lot, is patching. How do I patch my devices out there? I used to have this and I don't have this anymore. Well, if you if you come to Microsoft or anybody, if you go and say, hey, I want to go to the cloud, great. What are you bringing there? Are you bringing the 30-year processes and procedures? Because what you're going to do is just back yourself into another config man infrastructure, right? And then it's going to be not what you wanted. It's going to be twofold. So what you really want to do is figure out not just how do I go to the cloud, but how do I innovate my thought process and my workflows? Because that is the successful path to cloud, right? I love customers that want to go cloud only. You should have that aspiration, but that doesn't come without the proper mindset and the proper change, right? Change is the only thing consistent in the world. So guess what? You're going to have to figure out where I need to innovate, because the things you did 30 years ago, 20 years ago, if you bring that to the cloud, you're going to be back with what you got now, because you're going to keep saying, I can't do this and I have to have this. So the questions need to be, why do I have to have this? And is there something modern that will solve this so I don't have to go build this complicated infrastructure? Because what I see customers do all too often is, I want simplicity, but I'm going to get to simplicity through complexity. That's not a good equation for success. So hopefully that makes sense. But I mean, I can literally talk about that for like literally the rest of the hour, if not 2 or 3 hours. But that's kind of the process. Like, so when we talk about, like we're talking about the cloud transformation, right? With the big three, it could be almost a non-event. Without the big three, it doesn't. Can it be a non-event? It's going to take a little bit of effort, right? So for me, the most important message to land: the customers that have ConfigMan, use it to get to the cloud. Once you get to the cloud, reevaluate, right? But the customers that don't have it, you should build cloud. You should build cloud only from jump. And I've done this with several customers. Still doing it with lots of customers, even in the new role. It's like, build it cloud only, and then now let's talk about where innovation needs to happen, right? Because I love those conversations about, hey, I need these type of reports. I need this type of, I need to check these boxes to deploy these patches. I need to do this. I need to do that. That's where we would spend a lot of time to help innovate that thought process and who needs to be the proper resource to solve those problems.
So being a little inclusive of some of our other global regions and areas, let's talk a little bit about a particular scenario that our buddy Stefan brought back up in the Q&A, and it involves areas where bandwidth might not be as
Yes.
as plentiful or limited. So what do we recommend doing when we are dealing with bandwidth constraints and having slow downloads over CMG for sites which are far from where the CMG is located? I know we have a lot of customers who have partners over in China and Asia, and they're trying to get content from a US based CMG, and they have super high speed internet, but getting content from CMG due to the geolocation of their CMG might be a little slow.
So first off, I'll say, if you're having inefficient performance from your CMG, I would say that's 100% a support case, because the CMG is scaled out globally, right? So if you have devices in, let's say you have devices in Australia, right? We test with Sydney MP or Malaysia MP, CMGs. So in that sense, your resources shouldn't be going slow. So that's a support case. I'd be interested to hear more about that. Now, when we talk about locations with low bandwidth and slow bandwidth, so I used to have a certain location in Malaysia that literally had, like, I swear, the worst distribution point in the world, but not here nor there. Um, I mean, there's lots of technologies to use. I actually love the whole traffic conversation because there's so many different ways to solve that, right? My last option, right? Again, when I talked about config man in the box, right? Don't go outside the box. Hey, I want to put a distribution point somewhere. Why? Why can't you use branch cache, peer cache, client cache, like all the different caching technologies in the operating system, and then inside the actual SCCM client itself, the config man agent itself? You should be doing the boundary thing where your content goes within the boundary, and then I service the other devices in the boundary. Now, that's just one method, right? And I love talking about content. So then you have also MCC, Microsoft Connected Cache. Yes, it's still server right now, but you got a server out there, and I love to characterize Microsoft Connected Cache as self-sustained distribution point. It's a very high-level articulation, but if you think about it, right, when you leverage Microsoft Connected Cache, it's really a self-sustained distribution point because we will follow the rules from delivery optimization, and all of those can be configured within your group policies, aka cloud policies. You can go configure that stuff, right? So when you say, hey, this site needs to only let content within its boundary, and then you could even have sub boundaries in it that will be controlled by the operating system. So if you look at if you really want a visual of it, go look at your gpedit.msc on your device and go look at delivery optimization controls. All those controls are exactly what I'm talking about. So when you look at that, you can say how long the content lives on the server. Like if it hasn't been touched the next amount of days, should I automatically purge it out? Literally, you could build it out as a self-sustained distribution point. So very little scripting, just some configuration that needs to be done. So MCC, I love it. Again, tiers when I think about network and bandwidth and traffic. Tiers is, I would say branch cache, client cache, MCC. There's just a whole decision tree there. But the very last option is actual a resource on site, because there's other things you can do, right? Man, I used to use Windows clients as DPs, especially for small location, low bandwidth locations. But again, not without doing delivery optimization, those things that will help me not have to put servers out in locations, resources. I actually had one customer that had over 1,000 distribution points, and I helped them shrink that because they didn't need all that. They had like a distribution point in every site. But when we started looking at the caching technologies and how to set it up correctly, like if I would say about the most painful piece about content management is when it is incorrectly set up. When it is incorrectly set up, prepare for headaches, have a bottle of aspirin because it's not going to be pretty. But when you test it and understand it, simple. I'll almost set it and forget it, non-event type thing. When you get just configuration misconfigured, it'll be a headache. So configuration and testing, I would say, is super important. That's why I like the content conversation, because every time I talk to a customer and they bring up content and the headaches they're having, again, that whole SCCM is too complicated and I don't want to use it, I want to just cut the cord. Well, that's some of the pain points that they have. And when you can talk about simplifying it and help them understand what they're doing in the proper configuration, light bulbs go off and things are smooth.
So many interesting questions popping up. Here's one that
I mean, I dug myself in a hole.
this one has piqued my curiosity as well. So, Azure provides some security recommendations, secure score for the CMG resources within a subscription. What are your thoughts on applying those? I've never been asked that before, actually.
What recommendations I would say, and then what's driving you to make those recommendations, right? Like the way I heard that question is, hey, I walked by the hall and somebody told me my servers, needs to be secure. Well, what does that mean, right? Or am I going to do something just because I heard something or saw something, or am I doing it to
Right, but in this case, this is Microsoft making that recommendation. So
yeah,
I mean,
yeah, you're right.
yeah.
You're right. So our security tool says, "Hey, go turn XYZ on." I would still ask why, not necessarily our own tool, but like the answer. I need more than your tool said to turn this on. Okay, great. The tool said turn it on, but why are we turning it on? I'm not saying that we shouldn't. I just need to understand more because what I have to go do is figure out, is that something that we need to incorporate into the actual build? Does that make sense? Like, how do we do this, or is this just a general? I mean, you have general security alerts, and then you have security alerts that have a thing behind it.
The
right?
rule of thumb I have is if it's recommended because it's a well-known and proven solution, then by all means stick with a recommended and a well-known solution. Yeah. And speaking of that, Danny, we should have security baselines as a topic coming up at some point. Definitely. So here's another one. This is interesting. Is CMG required for autopilot hybrid AD join? Some documentation showed it as required.
Is CM? No, it's not required.
No. It'd be interesting to see that documentation.
Well, I think there's some things behind that question that I don't want to allude to because we don't have enough time to go into it. But whoever asked that question, hit me up on Tech Community. I love to talk about it some more. Everybody that's hit me up on Tech Community so far, I've either had a meeting or we exchanged mails. So if you do have a question, feel free. Sometimes these sessions aren't long enough to dive as deep as I like to go. But no, it's not a requirement, but I believe there's probably, if I saw the documentation, there's probably something behind it. Like if you look at our documentation, we put scenarios, and probably that scenario may have dictated that one as a requirement.
So yeah, the person chimed in about the security recommendations a little bit more. Things like storage accounts should use a private link connection. Azure Defender storage should be enabled. Yeah, those are. Yeah, I see absolutely. Nothing wrong with that. That's they're recommended for a reason. And
yep. There's some things to unpack there. So that person that asked that question too, I'd love to talk to you too about. So hit me up on Tech Community. We don't have enough time to unpack it, but yeah, I'd love to get some one-on-one with that one for sure.
So let me run through some more of these questions here. Looks like I missed a few.
Well, we got any other good ones? So I guess while you're looking, let me check my.
Here's one. I'm not really sure about the context, but are there RBAC controls available to specify who can install applications at a granular level, such as a help desk?
When you say install applications, are you talking?
Oh, actually, Heather's Heather, the help desk operator. Heather answered that one already. Gotcha. I need to scroll through properly. Yeah, there are a few autopilot questions snuck in there, and I just wanted to let people know we're actually going to dedicate an entire episode to autopilot.
Yep.
So we're not blowing that off or ignoring that. It's just that's a whole topic in and of itself, probably multiple episodes. But another great question here is, our roadmap is to deploy cloud applications that are cloud native, like O365 Pro Plus, which is actually Microsoft Enterprise, Microsoft 365 apps for enterprise, Workday, Salesforce, and some other apps which are ready, that are actually cloud ready, and some other apps which have not been transformed to be managed by Config Manager. So is this still possible with tenant attach or code management only?
Sounds like a both scenario. So what are they trying to do again?
Well, they want to deploy cloud applications that are cloud native, like OPP, Workday, Salesforce, and some apps which are ready to migrate to the cloud, and other apps which have not been transformed to be managed by Config Manager. Is this still going to be possible with tenant attach or code manage only?
Well, in that case, right, you have some options. If it's cloud only, then you can deploy it from the cloud. If it's co-management, still deploy it from the cloud. All you're doing is moving the sliders between config man as well as co-manage, config man as well as Intune. So you are kind of in control. I guess the scenario, if you're using co-management today and you have a configuration manager state, move the slider to Intune and boom for OPP apps, Office Click to Run, I think it is specifically the name. And yeah, you can make that deployment from the cloud and be done with that and not have to micromanage that through a config man. And I mean, that's literally kind of the transformation. So that's a really good question. Like, that's the type of things that you would want to do and move as you transform from that on-prem to that cloud management, right? So when you move that slider, now that workload's in the cloud, less for you to manage, maintain, less logs for you to try to go chase and config man, right?
So Rob asked an earlier question that was pretty good. They switched over some devices to use Intune for Windows Update, but now they want to deploy out-of-band patches for things like Adobe Flash removal and probably third-party patching. How are customers doing that with Intune right now? And we do see customers doing things like leveraging the Intune management extension or sidecar and pushing out these patches through our Win32 app model as an option. I know that there are also some third-party ISV partners that have some stuff that integrates with Intune and sidecar as well. But that's something that we've been double clicking on a lot with customers to find out, how we can enhance, our app delivery model for future scenarios like integrating things. But for right now, it's you can use customized app payload workloads with Win32, or you can leverage some of our partners to enhance the Intune experience there.
Yep, that's it.
I think we've touched on most of the questions. Again, some of these will table, like some of the autopilot ones, until a later episode. So please come back with those. And we'll also take a look at these, and if there's any that we missed, we'll try to get those answered as well as we did with the previous episode. But lots of engagement today. This is incredible. I really appreciate the engagement. Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, thanks everybody. I appreciate it. It's good, good contacts, good questions. We don't have a date for the next episode yet, but keep checking Tech Community. We'll let everybody know.
And have a great weekend, everyone.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Talk to y'all later.